Welcome, everybody, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, it's the end of most of the minor league season. We've got some AA playoffs. We've got some final week of AAA, and the Boston Red Sox are playing out the stretch in the majors. So we're winding down here, but no shortage of things to talk about. And I do want to make sure I get out there that there is no locker room controversy on the Sox Prospects staff, no matter what the media may be reporting. I don't know. Do you have any comment about the vicious rumors about SoxProspects.com locker room upset about certain transactions that have been made recently?
No, I don't listen to those rumors because they don't exist.
We got to get you like an improv class during the off season or something, brother.
I'm a straight shooter. Go straight to the point.
Jesus. No yes and here on the Sox Prospects podcast. Anyway, all right, well, fair. We've got promotions. We've got AFL rosters. We've got news in the majors. We've got trades happening after the fact, players to be named later, and the like. Waiver claims, all kinds of stuff to discuss. But of course, if you want to support the show, before we get to all of that, you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen. You can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. Pledge a certain amount per episode to get some neat rewards related to rankings, related to when we go to games, and things like that. And of course, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your cousin, tell your great aunt 3 times removed. Tell someone about the show. Great way to spread the word. And of course, we like to talk about what you want to hear about. And we're going to do your emails this episode, as always. And you can send your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. So hit us up, podcast@soxprospects.com. Ian, let's jump right in. And I would like to start with kind of the elephant in the room here at the major league level, which has been really the news cycle over the past week in the majors has been focused on this Kevin Plawecki move, and the move being Kevin Plawecki being designated for assignment and then released to make room on the roster for Franklin Herman. Part of it, and by the way, let me just throw this out there to begin the show. If you have not yet heard the Bradfo Show interview with Chaim Bloom, go do that. Listen to my appearance on the Bradfo Show first, but then go listen to the interview with Chaim Bloom. It's really required listening. If you're listening to this show, there is no reason for you not to do that, because there's some interesting things on there. And with related to the Plawecki thing, Ian, one thing that they talk about is just, and this is Bradford talking about this, not Bloom. Writers' jobs right now is to write a headline. The headline is more important than the article. Journalism about the game is dead, like the actual physical game on the field. Like the Red Sox had 20 hits. No one cares. You read the box score if you want that. It's about the off-field type stuff is what they have to write to get clicks. That's what their goal is right now. That's what they're being paid to do, is write to get clicks. And the locker room being up in arms about Kevin Plawecki being released gets clicks, gets more clicks than the starter exited in the 5th inning, and it was kind of another mad game and a mess season. Which, by the way, tangent, if one more person refers to the Red Sox as the last place Boston Red Sox, I'm going to lose my mind. Yes, they're in last in the division. They're like a 500-ish team. They're mediocre. They're not horrible. But anyways, this Plawecki thing, to me, Ian, I think there's a little bit to it in terms of the Red Sox maybe could have done things a little better. But at the same time, like Kevin Plawecki being DFA'd is something that we've discussed as a potential move in like the middle of the season. Like I think the fact has been so overblown that like the number of people who think there's just this like locker room riot in response to it, it's kind of bonkers to me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this whole story or non-story?
Well, I think to start, I think that it obviously didn't help that Rich Hill and Nate Eovaldi came out publicly and talked about it. But I also think that this isn't like news that especially Eovaldi has been upset with like the moves that Chaim Bloom and the front office have been making. Like, I feel like he's been talking about that for pretty like during the deadline after the Vasquez trade. I feel like he came out publicly and talked about that. And I just think that, it's the culmination of a frustrating season. Seeing one of their friends go is tough, but
right
at the end of the day, Chaim Bloom's job is to win baseball games going forward. This year, as you talked about, is kind of a loss, is not going to end how they wanted it to. And his job is to put the team in the best position to succeed for the future. And Kevin Plawecki's not a part of this future. Like, he's not going to be part of the organization next year. And frankly, if he had been performing better on the field, he would still be here. Like, they wouldn't have cut him if he wasn't struggling defensively and offensively. He'd been one of the worst hitters on the team all year, and defensively he's regressed, where yes, he can catch in game, but he can't throw it all. And I think that's, that his performance, obviously they wanted to give Franklin Herman a look, but I also think that his performance kind of, forced their hand here. Like, they had two catchers who were performing better than him. They wanted to give Connor Wong a look. Reese McGuire has been great since they got him. Reese McGuire's been better than Christian Vasquez has been with the Astros, like, significantly.
Yes. Yep.
They wanted to give those guys all the playing time, and you're not going to carry a third catcher, who's not going to play as in this situation with the team in the place where it is. It's not like they're going to be, need to manage every game, like you have to win it or your season is over. They don't need to have that much depth, in my opinion. If they need to, they can just go get Ronald Hernandez from AAA, or even like Davey Gurriel for a week if they really run into that situation. And I think they just decided that it was in the best interest of the organization long term to get a look at what Herman can do against major league hitters. And I think that was the right call. And frankly, as we talked about, I was surprised they didn't do it at like beginning of September. Like, I could understand maybe the complaint is the timing of it. You didn't give him a chance to sign with a contender with the chance for the playoffs or something like that. But yeah,
I don't buy that.
I just think I don't really think it's a story at all. I think it's a team looking at building for the future. And like, if the Tigers or someone did this, no one cares. Like, it's just because it's the Red Sox. It's a story. There's
been a bunch of guys DFA'd lately off of major league rosters. Like, if you follow the MLB trade rumors, like, feed, like, they're not the only team that has done this. This is a thing that is happening across the game right in the month of September. I mean, I don't get the timing argument, because it's not like he's going to sign with the team to be their starter. He's got like a 60 something WRC plus this year. Like, and he's I think he's like 40 something out of 44 base. He's only thrown out 4 attempted base stealers this year.
Yeah, no, I think though that like
he's a backup.
You never know though. Like, some team could have on September 1st signed him that he had a chance. I don't think it's the playing time. It's more like you give them a chance to like, go to the playoffs or whatever.
Okay.
He's a veteran.
So question, when the Angels cut Jose Iglesias last September, were they like cold and callous because they cut him in September?
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think
it's bonkers. And I'm not arguing with you about it. I'm saying,
and I also think that the problem is that there's just a portion of the Red Sox fan base that has just made their mind up on this front office, and they're out.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what the move is. And we see it, like, we'll tweet about Abraham Almonte and people get upset about it. It makes no sense to me. Like, it's a move that doesn't, and at the end of the day, doesn't really impact anything for the long term of the organization. But because of, this team and kind of like the displeasure there's been expressed by some of the fan base with how the season has gone, like, that's kind of the point we've reached, that it doesn't matter what the move is, it's going to get criticized, which is I foolish to me. But I mean,
yeah, and to be fair, and I don't think you would, like, there's plenty to complain about with how the front office has performed this year. Like, no question. We're not saying the front office is on a sale.
Well, no, I think I don't think that's the right word. I think the way I would look at it is, I think that if you ask the front office, and I'm sure, I don't know if Chaim Bloom addressed this on the Bradford show, I think they would admit they've made mistakes with some of the decisions they've made when it comes to like roster management, construction, trusting certain guys to embrace roles that they ended up not being able to fulfill, like things like that. But I think that, criticizing them for something like this is just not.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
It's looking for something to complain about. Like who was the last time? I mean, even in Boston, when's the last time Boston fans have been so upset about a below replacement level player being cut?
Well, and I wonder how much of it is the player versus that they look at Eovaldi's comments. And
Eovaldi and Hill, right?
That's what kind of is driving it. They're on the player side in that back and forth, and that's how they view it.
But it's funny because it feels like Boston's not usually a fan base where like it feels like that fan base would be the like shut up and play fan base.
I don't know. It's
To
just
some
weird. It's also
degree.
weird to
It's
me
weird.
that speaking of those comments, like they go back to like Kyle Schwarber and like
Yeah.
guys were on the team last year. That's just weird to me. Like you can't in one sentence be like, oh, it's a business, then the next be like, well, we're really missing clubhouse leaders like these guys. Like, well, if aren't like I don't know. I don't want to go down this tangent, but it's just
No,
a
I feel you.
weird that whole discourse and the Eovaldi comments were just strange to me. I don't really know what he was trying to accomplish with that.
Yeah. To me, the only thing to complain about this is like, I'm with you. Like, why did you not do this a month ago? Because like, I don't think Franklin Herman, like anything changed on him in the last 2 weeks. I mean, maybe it's just, I mean, look, what it probably is they just wanted to see Connor Wong. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, he can handle this. We don't need you anymore. Like, would you have rather that they keep Kevin Plawecki on the roster heading into free agency and literally not play him? Like, is that because guess what? He's still getting paid, even though they released him. He's getting paid the same amount of money. You know, is it better to hold on to him and not play him? I don't think it is. Like, I think once it's respect for the veteran to release him if you're not going to play him.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like the same thing they did with Jackie Bradley. Like when they decided they were going a different direction, right field, they just released him.
Yep, exactly. No, I'm with you on that. And then as far, Ian, as the Franklin Herman thing, I mean, it's get up and get him the audition. I'm a little annoyed they didn't do it quicker. Like, I don't get. I mean, I guess once Yu Chang was claimed, right? So let's get the timeline here because the Red Sox claimed Yu Chang since our last episode as well, which I kind of like as taking a flyer, frankly. Talking with my father-in-law, the Rays fan, he's kind of like, it's too bad that they didn't ever inform him because we were kind of starting to like him down here. They claimed Yu Chang on the 12th or the 13th. Kevin Plawecki was DFA'd on the 17th, which also, I guess, happened to be Chang's first start. So maybe there is a correlation there. But they claimed Yu Chang, they DFA'd Jalen Davis, and that's when they DFA'd Juris Familia. Okay, another guy who needed to go. To me, this is just, okay, Chang's ready. We can get rid of a position player now. Wong and McGuire are fine behind the plate. We're not going to play Plawecki. I get that. I mean, and I get why you look at the roster and you say, well, Abraham Almonte is still there. But anyway, Herman, I'm interested to see what he does. He was definitely getting protected at this point. I think we had agreed to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. Get him, 2 weeks of run in the majors. I like it. Has had a couple of rough first outings, his first 2 outings, but those are kinks. They'll work out. I'm not too worried about it. I don't know if you got anything on the start of the Franklin Herman era in Boston, Ian.
Yeah, no, I think it was time to get a look at him. I think that people who were expecting him to be like the savior closer type, that's not what he really is. I think he's more like a middle reliever. Like a solid like 6th inning guy. Maybe he gets to the 7th inning role, but I don't really see a late inning arm. I think that what's holding him back is a couple things: consistency with command. We've kind of seen that already in his brief major league time, but also he doesn't have a true like plus out pitch. His fastball is his best pitch, and he's got really good velo, but his secondaries are both like average. Maybe you go like 55 on one of them. And so I think that like when you look at a closer, to me, you have to have like multiple elite, like you have to have a 60 at least and maybe a 70 secondary pitch. Like, and he just doesn't have that. So I think he's more like a middle relief type, but I think he could be like I'm very pro having, cheap middle relievers. So especially
with options
as you can bring them up and down. You can also allows you to spend more on like an established closer, which I do think this team needs. So, I'm interested to see how he does. And I think also just because he had a couple bad outings, like doesn't mean he's terrible.
No.
Like
that's why you bring him up now.
You've seen it with Brian Bayo. Like we just need to be patient with these young guys. Like I know I was realizing there haven't really been like some bigger prospects coming up in a few years now. So I think it's just the key is just being patient with those guys and giving them a chance to succeed rather than just kind of like judging them off of their first month or 2 in the big leagues.
There are 9 relievers in the major league bullpen right now, right? Schreiber is definitely a part of this bullpen next year. Matt Barnes is definitely a part of this bullpen next year. Both of those guys from day one. I'm curious of your thoughts on A, is this guy in the Major League bullpen on opening day? B, all right, let's just go with that. Major League bullpen on opening day next year, all right? Zach Kelly.
Does it have to be the Red Sox or can be any teams? But he's going to be in the Red Sox opening day bullpen.
Specify. Yeah.
He will be with the Red Sox next year, I predict.
I agree.
And if he doesn't, he's going to be on another team's opening day bullpen. He's shown plenty, I think, already in his brief.
Yeah. He's already, to me, like third on the. I mean,
he got a hold
rankings.
yesterday. He pitched his first leverage outing yesterday. So yeah.
Matt Strom, I think we both agree he's gone, especially if he wants to start.
Like he's a free agent. I mean, if he wants to come back and relief, I'd take him. But if he wants to start, I don't have any interest.
Yep, he's the same. Ryan Brazier.
I would be surprised if he was back next year.
I think he gets non-tendered. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I don't see why you would bring someone like him back at above the minimum.
Age 36, by the way.
Surprising.
I forget
36.
how old he is.
Yeah.
Caleb Ort, which I might have had a different answer a week ago.
He'll be in a Major League bullpen. I think it probably will be the Red Sox, or he'll be like the first guy to come up from Worcester.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think he's either in the Major League bullpen. It depends on what they do otherwise. Like if they get two guys, I could see him being the first guy up and the up and down guy.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one for me. Well, let's do Herman first. Herman.
I think he's in Worcester to start next year.
You think? Yeah, I could see that. Just based on how long it took them to bring him up this year, it doesn't feel like they think he's
there's
ready.
No rush with him. He's three options. Like they don't need.
Well, most of these. I mean, so does Kelly. So does Ort. I think does too. Yeah. Here's one. Edward Bizzardo.
I don't think he'll be with the Red Sox to start next year.
With the organization or the Major League team?
I'm back and forth on him. He pitched tonight. His stuff has been okay. I'm just bringing up his.
So here's the thing with me with Bizzardo.
Bond with him. Just 1 second.
To me, it's whether the Red Sox want to protect Edinson Paulino or Winkle and Gonzalez. I think we'll talk about Rule 5 at some point in a coming episode. But like, there's 6 guys right now who I think are pretty sure protects, and then you have Paulino and Wickelman as like.
Wickelman maybe pitched his way to getting protected with how he pitched in
Greenville.
The other Paulino's tough. We'll talk more about that in the offseason. But I think that Bizzardo, like if I had to guess, I don't think he will be on the opening day roster, but I could see him also in like Worcester to start the year or DFA'd and in someone else's bullpen or organization next year.
I could see it.
He's going to pitch in the big leagues like at some point next year.
He'll be up and down.
I just don't know for who though.
I want to see them with more because they didn't really do the fungible arms thing this year. They just didn't have, like we talked about this. They didn't do the up and down arms thing. Like extend. I mean, and it's tougher now because they have to stay down for 15 days.
Well, it's also tougher. I think the options thing.
I don't think the limit. I know you mentioned that, and it's not. It's definitely a consideration.
I also just don't think they had the arm. Everyone was hurt, so all the arms they would have done.
Right,
were
they were already out.
Leagues. Yeah,
that's fair. And the last guy is Tyler.
But I also think that was the issue for them this year, though, was they didn't have the 40-man spots to be yo-yoing people because they had like multiple minor leaguers who were out for a significant amount of time on the 40-man, or they had guys on the 15-day DL taking up spots who ended up being like on the DL for 30 days or whatever. Like they didn't have the roster flexibility that they would have hoped. I have a feeling.
Right. Last guy is Tyler Danish. I think he's DFA'd if he sticks around. Great. If he doesn't,
I could see him getting DFA'd and frankly passing through waivers. I wouldn't be surprised if he.
I could see him getting claimed too because I think he's.
Yeah, no, I think he could, but I wouldn't be surprised if he cleared either.
Does he have? I want to check and see if he's got options. But yeah, we'll talk about roster construction for next year. But I just figured while we're discussing. All right, so Danish had one option left entering the year. Did he burn it? This is riveting audio. Minor league player options. He did burn his option this year, so he is out of options. So yeah, he gone. Fair enough. All right, what else we got? Moving on. Oh, other news from this week that outraged some people, and I think we are of kind of different minds on this. The Red Sox are going to wind up about $4.5 million over the CBT. The first CBT threshold is 230, right? So they're at like 234 and a half, basically. I think it's 230. Might be 240. I think it's 230. People freaking out about it, Ian, and I think it really comes down to, I mean, there's certain complaints, and I'm curious of your thoughts on some of them, and I'm going to leave the one that I think leads to actual good discussion for last. If they hadn't signed James Paxton, they wouldn't have been over. Which to me, it's like you don't sign James Paxton in the first place if the CBT is something you are super concerned about.
But, yeah, that's revisionist history to me because everyone at the time liked the Paxton contract. Obviously, it didn't work out because he got hurt again, but I don't think that's a fair complaint.
Right. And that's a move you make to have the option to sign him cheap for 2 more years if he comes back. Like it's a future play. Oh, the other one is the Jackie Bradley trade, the Hunter Renfroe Jackie Bradley trade. I saw someone on our forum saying, like, I hope you like David Hamilton and Alex Pinellas because they went over the CBT for them. I don't agree with that either, just because I don't think Jackie Bradley is the reason they went over. I mean, they needed to do more, not less in the outfield. So I don't.
Yeah, I don't think that put them over either because wasn't Renfroe's salary like $6 million or $7 million or something?
Renfroe was going to get 7 or something. Yeah,
and Bradley's like only counts 10 or something or 9 against the CBT. I thought. Wasn't this a weird contract that it didn't count for the full maybe 12? But yeah, that's my point. 10. Is the difference there isn't enough to put them over.
Yeah, but the final one is what the team did at the deadline. As we have discussed, and as is borne out by this report, the only trades they could have made to get under the tax would have been to deal either JD Martinez or Nathan Eovaldi. Those were the only guys making enough money who were really legitimately tradable. I mean, I guess you could put Xander Bogaerts in there, but like obviously they're not trading Xander Bogaerts. Those are really the only 2 options they had to get under the CBT. Do you want to go first or second on this? Because I know you want me to go first. Okay. My thoughts on this are this. At the time of the trade deadline, they are 2 games back of both the second and third wildcard teams. Granted, it is a crowded field and they were like the 4th team behind them. But they thought they had just gotten Eovaldi back. He'd made like 3 or 4 starts. They thought they were going to get back Waka, Hill, Sale, Story in the near future. They thought they were getting healthy again. I get why they didn't want to completely punt on the season. I get that. You can disagree with that, and if you disagree with that, fine. Like, I don't think anyone's going to change anyone's mind on that. It's possible, and I think this is where you're going to go, that they were asking for too much for those 2 guys. Fair, and you can make that point. I get that. I don't necessarily disagree with it. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that there's different pieces of going over the CBT. One is that, obviously the number goes up every year. The thing that people forget is, and I forget what exactly it is, but once you're over for 3 years, you like forfeit like revenue sharing or something. So like there are legitimate significant monetary issues beyond the like tax, because the amount you get taxed is nothing. Like, oh, it goes up to 50%. Great. If you're 5 million over, then you get taxed for 2.5 million. Whoop-de freaking do.
Yeah, I've never understood the people complaining about like owners spending their money.
Right.
Like whatever. Like I feel like, in a lot of areas in the country or, other teams, they complain that their owner doesn't spend money.
Right.
So I've never understood the complaint that, we don't want them to spend money. Like we need to worry about the CBT, like from a financial perspective. There's obviously, as you're about to get into, there's like on the field, there's the penalties. Those, that's a different story. But for the just straight finances, I've never really understood that argument.
The actual on-field penalties. Yes, if you go over like the 3rd threshold, your first pick gets moved back 10 spots. That's not insignificant.
Well,
but they're obviously not.
Isn't it not, though? The Red Sox had their pick moved back 10 spots a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was the year they drafted Cameron Cannon.
They weren't over the threshold, though.
Yeah,
I thought it was
2018. They went.
They
over
were
the
like 280
threshold.
million or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they were way over because they were already over, and then they went out at the deadline and got Eovaldi and
I didn't realize they were that far over.
Yeah, they went over the third threshold that year.
Because I know like the Dodgers had that punishment this year, which is no surprise there.
I think those are the only two teams that have ever had it, though. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, I think those are the only two that's happened to. Anyway, otherwise, like I said, there's the you lose the revenue sharing thing, whatever. That's not on field. The rest of the penalties, they more have to do with your compensation for losing qualifying offer free agents and your compensation. Your penalty for signing one and your compensation for losing one in terms of qualifying offer free agents. If you lose a qualifying offer free agent and you go over the CBT versus not going over the CBT when you're not a revenue sharing recipient or not a revenue sharing recipient, the difference is that your pick goes from roughly 75-ish to roughly 135-ish, which of course the pick goes back and you also lose that bonus pool money. So 60 spots, fine. That's not nothing. I also get punting on that in the right situation. Whether this is the right situation or not, fine. The penalties for signing a qualifying offer free agent, you go from giving up your second round pick and $500,000 worth of international free agent bonus pool money to giving up your second pick, your fifth pick, and $1 million of IFA money. So the difference is that fifth pick and the extra $500K in IFA money. Again, not nothing. But that said, we're not talking about giving up your first pick, right? The on-field penalties are not zero, but they are not extremely punitive, right? Like a fifth round pick, let's face it, most of the folks listening, name a fifth round pick off the top of your head other than, Mookie. It's not just that by then a lot of people are checked out.
I could name several.
I mean, we can, but we're that's our job, right? Nathan Hickey comes to mind, but it's not a huge loss. That said, if you were definitely punting on the season and didn't get under the CBT, yes, malfeasance all the way. I get that. But I don't know. To me, it's not a crisis that they didn't get under. It's not gross mismanagement that they didn't get under. A lot of it has to do with what they're going to do in coming years. If they're going to get under in 2 years anyway, it doesn't, whatever. But I don't know. I've been talking too long, Ian. I'll kick it to you. I know you have some different thoughts, which I think is good. I'm curious where you're coming down at this point on the CBT thing.
Well, I think that I don't have a problem. I understand where you're coming from, and I would tend to agree that if you think your team has a chance to make the playoffs, and I think the Red Sox did, and in that snapshot in time they did, obviously with what happened afterwards with the injuries and poor performance on the field,
right?
It wasn't going to happen. But again, that's looking revisionist history with that. I just think that at the time, I think they could have traded someone like JD Martinez, even if they got very little for him, and still been in the same situation and made the same run, because I just didn't think he was performing that well. And
can I jump in? What would you, and I don't mean this in a sarcastic, what would you have done? I'm legitimately curious how you would have played that out, presuming you just trade him for minor leaguers and what you get back in the trade isn't what you're replacing that. Or maybe say that's what you would have done. Yeah.
Obviously the team he was most heavily linked with was the Mets, and the reported package was the Red Sox wanted a top, I think it was 10 prospect is what the New York writers said. And a major leaguer or something, or another piece. I understand why they had a high asking price. JD Martinez was obviously, he's got the track record. He was one of the better bats available at the deadline. The Mets really needed a DH. And I would have been fine if you decide that, we're not going to get the offer we want. I would have I think taking a flyer on someone like Dom Smith, seeing what he can do. Obviously you have first base locked up, but maybe he can DH, maybe he can fake it in the outfield again, like the Mets tried, and see if you can, rediscover his form from a couple of years ago when he was seen as one of, the more intriguing young hitters in the National League, or, with the Mets. And I think just swapping JD for him, it might have been something you consider, but because I didn't think JD Martinez was performing the role that the Red Sox needed. And I think that his, role was replaceable. Obviously, that one would have sent another message. Like, I feel like the players would have, kind of not been very pleased with that, since he seems very popular in the clubhouse. He's been there a while. But I just think at the end of the day, like, he's going to be like a one WAR player this year and he's going to end up, 275, 340, 425, 430. Like, I think that's a player they could have replaced. And I think they could have maybe, gotten maneuvered under while trading him while still trying to compete. But this is nitpicky and revisionist. Like, at the time I was fine with it. I mean, they traded Vasquez, and I think they ended up, frankly, with the better catching situation than they had heading into the deadline now.
Yeah.
And they added,
I think it's fair. You can sell. We traded Christian Vasquez, and while it's a slight step back behind the plate, we think we did enough elsewhere. Yeah. It's a net positive that you can sell.
Right. And honestly, that's I think what they were going for is, we got a first baseman, we got a left fielder, we addressed two of our biggest holes. Yes, we traded Vasquez, but we think that these two guys can do enough. And frankly, as we said, McGuire's been better than Vasquez since they were traded. Like, Vasquez barely plays on the Astros. They play Maldonado most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I think they tried to go for it. It didn't work out, but I understand the selling. I just don't think they would have gotten what people think they could have gotten. Also, I think that's the other issue is you saw the packages that were handed out at the deadline. Rentals didn't go for that much. The guys who got the big returns were the guys who were multiple years, and both those guys were rentals. And so I think they just made the calculus that what we would have got back wasn't worth, basically punting on the year versus trying to go for it with, as you said, all the guys coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, do you move him, call up Casas, and then you're like DHing Dahlbeck? I mean, right now what you would be doing is you'd be DHing like whoever of Ref Snyder or
no, I think that's though where you call the Nationals and say like, hey, give us Luke Voigt also. It would have to be in conjunction, or you get Dom Smith and try like a Dahlbeck Dom Smith platoon at DH. Like it would have needed to be in conjunction with another move. Like you couldn't, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like on its own, I would have been an interesting one, but no, I would have liked do something creative like that, like trade him, acquire someone else to fill that role for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, since the trade deadline, JD Martinez 245, 325, 381 slugging, 706 OPS, 41 Ks and 158 plate appearances, which is a little uncharacteristic.
It's been a rough season for him, and I mean, it's a discussion obviously we'll get into when we get to the offseason, but he's going to be a fascinating
he's been better lately.
Candidate.
He's been actually really good in September.
The discussion about what to do with his qualifying offer is going to be very interesting.
I wouldn't give him one. I wouldn't, because he'd take it. And
I think he's
want that
likely to
roster
take
spot.
it, yeah.
I think he would take it.
I don't know if he could get that much on a 1-year deal in free agency. Like Nelson Cruz was in a similar position. He got, I think, 14 million or 15 million. Yeah.
15, I think he said. Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is. We'll see what they do going forward. I mean, you're not going to know whether it's a crisis thing or not until 3 years from now. Right. We'll see they have so much more money free this. I mean, they've got like 80 million under the CBT more or less to work with this offseason potentially. So they've got some space. Let's stay in the majors, Ian. Garrett Whitlock was shut down finally with his hip thing, which I don't think there's really a whole lot to say there. But interesting comments from Alex Cora. It does seem, between what Cora said and what's been reported, that the team is looking at Garrett Whitlock as a starter next year. I know we have, in the past, been advocates of Garrett Whitlock starting pitcher. Where do you fall on it as we sit here in September of 2022?
I think that it makes. I think he should be run out as a starter next year, and I think the most important thing though is to have clarity. I don't want another season of him yo-yoing back and forth. I think if you're going to make him a starter, you commit to it. If you're going to make him a reliever, you commit to it. And I think it's all signs are pointing to them wanting to put him in the rotation. I think his stuff plays in the rotation. It's the 3-pitch mix. He's got good velo. He's got the control, the command to do it. And I think that when you think about like his contract too, his contract is a steal in the rotation. Like if he's a reliever, it's still a really good contract, but in the rotation, like that's an insane deal. And I think that I think that just long term, he's suited to be a starter, and I would like to see him, get a full offseason. To obviously not a full. Well, he's getting that surgery, so maybe not a full offseason. But
no, he apparently has had the surgery now, so that he can. It's like arthroscopic surgery.
Yeah, but just be
so
ready.
He can have close to a full.
Okay,
offseason.
so he can like I would like have the mentality to know that I'm going into camp to be a starter.
Yep.
And I think that like he could be like a solid mid rotation guy for them if given leeway and time to adjust the role and given a full season's worth or close to of if he can stay healthy and stay on the mound for that long.
I mean, you look at the rotation for next year. You've got Pivetta coming back. I think at this point, Brian Bayo, you plan on him being up for the rest of his career. Like I don't think you see him as a guy in AAA entering next year, unless like a bunch of stuff goes really really well. You got those two. You've got Sale in some capacity. You've got to probably go get at least one starting pitcher, whether it's re-signing Waka or Eovaldi or getting some other free agent or something. And then after that, it's like, do you get a second guy? Do you count on Whitlock? But counting on Whitlock means you're also counting on Sale. Like, I think, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. I'm cool with getting two guys and just, getting 6 guys for 5 spots and seeing where the cards fall. Can you count on Chris Sale at this point? Can you count on Garrett Whitlock at this point? I'm very interested to see how that all shakes out. And it's trite, but you can never have too much pitching. But I'm with you. I go into next year planning to start Whitlock. It's just that what that means and why it was a problem this year is you need to have shored up the bullpen sufficiently, such that you do not miss him in the bullpen, and that's going to require getting a couple guys. Back end guys, not Tyler Danish types. You need guys who pitch like John Schreiber, but who you are counting on entering the season to pitch like John Schreiber. So, I'm cool with that plan myself. I think that's it for the majors, Ian. So let's move into the minors. I don't have anything to say about Yu Chang. Do you? They claimed him. It's neat.
I think he
may or may not be back.
I think it's a good flyer. They didn't have any real middle infield depth, especially with Jeter Downs now officially announced as out for the season. So I think it's a good move and see what he has. And obviously I think he was in Tampa. They'd have a lot of guys like him. So it was tough for him to find a role, but we'll see what he is and go from there.
Yeah. For sure. All right. In the minors, I guess first biggest news was the Arizona Fall League rosters. I guess other Winter League stuff is really the part of it, because this is probably going to be the most prospect heavy international winter group that we've seen in a long time. For as far as the Red Sox minor leagues go, I guess starting with the Arizona Fall League, Ian, a top-notch group of guys for the Arizona Fall League. And I did get the inevitable on Twitter, like, why are they wasting 4 spots on non-prospects? No team has 8 like top 10 guys that they're sending the Arizona Fall League.
I also think it's disrespectful to call them like non-prospects. Like, I don't see who the 4 non-prospects on that team are.
No, like, well, I mean, it's like just because you haven't heard of them does not mean that they're
like
whatever.
I think there's a reason that they sent every single person on that list.
Yeah. Well, look at it this way. There have been years that they have filled out their allotted slots for the AFL with filler. No question. That's happened. I don't know that it's happened recently. Like, I think these are 8 legit guys. On the hitter side, there's always a catcher, almost always at least. Steven Scott as the catcher made perfect sense. To me, I think I commented on Twitter, it was probably the second easiest spot to fill on this group. If you're sending a catcher, to send the guy who's in AA, could use catcher reps. He's in his first year as a full-time catcher, can hit a little bit. I'm cool with it. First base, Nico Cavadas makes perfect sense to me after the year he's had. Give him some more at-bats against top-notch competition. I'm cool with it. Second baseman, Nick York, needs the at-bats after dealing with 3 different independent injuries over the course of the year that have cost him a good amount of playing time. Get down there, change of scenery, work on some things, kind of work through what he's been bugged by this year at the plate. I like that. And then Wilyer Abreu in the outfield, a guy who they have a Rule 5 decision coming up on. Seems like a guy they will almost certainly protect, get him some more at bats, get them some more time to evaluate him before making that Rule 5 decision. So those guys all make sense to me. Any thoughts, Ian, on the hitter group that they're sending to Arizona?
No, I think you nailed why they're all heading there, and it's going to be an interesting crew. Obviously, as you said, they've got a pretty tough decision with Abreu. He's really on the bubble for me for if he's a protect or not. And then, York needs the reps. Obviously, he's had kind of a stop and start season where he, obviously didn't go how he or the Red Sox would have liked it to. But I think there's still some good underlying metrics there. And I think he just needs, consistent at bats, and hopefully he can get that in the AFL. And then Scott, as you said, the catcherness of him. And I can't remember the other. Yeah. Who's the other person? I can't remember.
Nico Nukes, man.
Oh, right. And Kavadas is the same thing that we've talked about, where he needs to face more advanced pitching consistently to be able to get like a fair evaluation of him. And that is just kind of a continuation of what he saw at AA, getting more looks there.
Agreed. Yeah. Just for reference, York ranked 4th in our current rankings, Kavadas 22nd, Abreu 26th, and Scott not ranked, but like if you wanted to have him in that like 45 to 60 range, I wouldn't argue with you. He's kind of on the bubble for the back end of the top 60. Pitcher wise, led by their starting pitcher, they're sending is Thaddeus Ward. To me, easiest guy to guess that they were sending. Coming back from Tommy John, needs the reps, no question. Appropriate ability level, makes perfect sense to me. The 3 relievers are Aaron Perry, Jacob Webb, and Ryan Zephyr-John, all right-handers, all very different sort of backgrounds. Zephyr-John, a former 3rd rounder. This year was his first in the bullpen. It seemed like he might have figured it out near the end of the year as far as being a reliever. And so I think building on that in Arizona makes a lot of sense, especially because you've got a little bit more room in the arm, given that he's used to throwing starter innings. So that made a lot of sense to me. Webb, the 2021 draft pick, pure reliever, has had a very good year in high A and double A. Really liked that move, sending him to Arizona, as kind of his was kind of like, we have a spot, let's send a good reliever. Webb makes sense. And then Aaron Perry, a guy who was hurt for almost the entire season. He made 2 appearances before the season ended. In his career as a professional, he entered the year having thrown 44 innings because of injuries. He had Tommy John surgery in 2018, missed the entire season. Aaron Perry was drafted in 2017. I always forget that.
Because he was a high school guy.
Didn't pitch in 2017.
Not under slot. They got for not like a massive bonus.
Yeah, he was a little bit over slot, 172 and a half.
He's always had good stuff, but just never stayed on the mound. So I'm interested to see what he looks like and get some reports from there, given he's been obviously very tough to get looks at or get eyes on.
Yeah. He missed most of last year due to an injury, missed almost all of this year due to an injury, and he had missed 17 and 18 because of Tommy John and most of 19. So just needs innings and pure reliever at this point. I like him. He's very intriguing. He's got some velo he can dial up. Good crew. Anything else on the pitchers, Ian? Again, it's pretty simple why they're all going, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to say. As you said, 2 of them are there to get innings after obviously they had missed significant time with injuries. And then Webb and Zephyr-John, I think, were 2 guys who they're kind of old for the lower minors. Both have had good seasons, and it's a good test for them to see how their stuff translates against more advanced hitters. Because I saw both of them in Greenville, and I liked what I saw, specifically with Zephyr-John. So I think this will be a good chance for them to kind of show what they have, and both for the Red Sox and for other organizations potentially.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking abroad at the international leagues, a number of guys who've been announced. And by the way, Ian, one player who literally just got reported as a Puerto Rico signee. But let's start in the Dominican, where the biggest story is Tristan Casas is going to be playing in for Licey, which, as I mentioned on Twitter, like I've got a neighbor who's a Licey fan, which is pretty great. So I'll be able to talk to him about Casas. But Tristan Casas has got to be I mean, the only previous example I could think of is Jaron Duran playing in Puerto Rico a couple of years back, but definitely the highest ranked prospect in the system that has played in an international league that I could think of in recent history. I don't know if you can think of anyone else. Needs at bats after missing so much time with his ankle injury. Franklin Herman is going to play for Las Aguilas as well as a reliever. And then over in Puerto Rico, Cedar Rafaela is going to play for Caguas.
There's more guys in the DSL or the
Dominican. So I know what you're going to say. So they just had their draft where you're eligible to be drafted for the Dominican League once you reach A ball.
Yeah, which is why Miguel Blaze wasn't selected. He'll probably be a top.
He'll be a top pick next year. No question.
He'll be a first round pick next year.
Well, put it this way, because Edinson Paulino was a second round pick this year. That said, it does not.
He was a second round pick this year. No,
yes. Edinson Paulino. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yes. So we just cut and we agree that Edinson Paulino was selected in the second round. Other guys drafted were Luis Guerrero, Juan Daniel Encarnacion, and Rita Senna. They are all not necessarily going to play this year. They're just like their rights have been drafted. So we may or may not see them this offseason. But that's in the Dominican. In Puerto Rico, what we knew before tonight was Cedar Rafaela is going to play for Caguas. Caguas, of course, is managed by Ramon Vasquez, who is a coach for the Boston Red Sox. And Caguas was the team that Alex Cora used to play for. He was the GM. I don't think he is anymore, but he's still involved with the team. That feels a lot like a team placement, Ian, I think. The other thing, by the way, that got reported literally 2 minutes ago by friend of Sox prospects, Edwin Hernandez, who covers the Puerto Rican League down there, is that Jeter Downs has signed with Mayaguez and is apparently going to be healthy for the Puerto Rican season. So Jeter Downs is apparently going to be playing in Puerto Rico as well. So another interesting Red Sox name down there. So between those four guys, I mean, those four guys alone are probably the best winter league representation this team has had in a long time in the foreign winter leagues. So
I also think, though, it shows how many of their top prospects missed significant time with injury this season, or not Rafaela's case, but like Downs.
Not Rafaela or Herman, but Downs and Casas for
Downs
sure.
and Casas, Ward, York. I was thinking going back to the AFL guys.
Oh,
too.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's true. And they miss time and are healthy enough now that they can play. Right. It's not like sometimes guys miss time and you're like, look, just get healthy this offseason. We'll deal with it next year.
Yeah. Cause I don't think I think I briefly mentioned earlier, but they announced today that Jeter Downs was being shut down for the rest of the regular season because Worcester's still playing. So he, potentially could have come back for that, but they're shutting him down to be healthy for the winter ball. So
for winter ball, I guess. Yeah. So that makes sense. They probably, why try and rush him back for 3 games now? Just shut it down.
It's more than 3 because they have this weird 3-game series next week also.
Yeah. So next week they've got their 6 and then they play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah. It's strange. But I'm just saying if he wasn't going to be ready for the start of the year.
There's 6 games left in the season for them, I think.
9.
No. Thursday, Friday,
6,
Saturday,
not including
Sunday.
Tonight. Got it. Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7. Sorry.
7.
It's either 6 or 7. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
7-minute abs. Okay. Yeah, but by the way, speaking of Winter League, make sure you're keeping an eye on news.soxprospects.com, where we're going to have weekly fall and Winter League updates. You can track their progress there as well as at the Sox Prospects Fall Winter League page, which we'll have linked on the front page as well. So you can check that out. Other prospecty type news, Nick Northcutt was traded. Nick Northcutt was sent to Cincinnati, which is nice for him because it's local for him. That's near where he grew up. But he was the player to be named later in the Tommy Pham trade. Another one where a lot of people were freaking out for no good reason. At the time, he was not ranked in our top 60. Leads the organization in home runs for the year, but I think we've talked about him a fair amount, Ian. It's a lot of power and not a whole lot else there at the moment. We didn't really, there were a lot of strikeouts. The hit tool just wasn't there. Not a great fielder either. I'm fine with giving up Northcutt for Tommy Pham, even for 2 months of Tommy Pham.
Yeah, I didn't even realize there was a player named later in that trade. I thought it was Cash.
Yeah.
It's fine. He was in a position. I think this is probably another, motivating factor for the Red Sox was he was in a position where next season I don't really know where he was going to get at bats.
Oh, if I can jump in, he was already a backup in Portland.
Right. And it was only going to get worse next year. Well, I guess Lugo's up there now also. But they're going to have Lugo, they're going to have Cavadas. That's your first baseman, your third baseman starting, playing every day. And DH, there's other guys too that like him. So maybe he's a DH. What
they were doing at the end of the year is because they had, before Benelis got hurt, it was like Lugo would play third and they would have someone at second, and then Lugo would play second and Benelis would play third, and they were moving guys around, and that's normal. But yeah, I agree with you.
But I think, the Reds, they do like those power guys. I think they give Reese Hines, some other prospects, Austin Hendricks, some guys like that. Power guys with questionable hit tools. So maybe they can unlock something with his hit tool wise, but I think it was going to be a tough road for him to break through in the Boston organization.
I mean, look, I understand it if you're the Reds and the Red Sox gave them a list, say, which is a thing that may or may not, players to be named later. This is what happens sometimes is here's a list of 6 guys, scout them and pick one. That's a standard thing. It goes both directions. And I could see if they got a list of 6 guys of about Northcutt's projection, going with the guy who's got probably 60 raw. I get that. Rather than a guy with a bunch of 45s who's org depth, swing for the fences, pun not intended, but I'll ratify it. I'll go with it. I understand it, but at the same time, if you're the Red Sox, it's.
I saw some people say that comparing being oh, well, he's similar to Bobby Dahlbeck profile wise.
No.
Just as a point of reference, Northcutt in AA this year was 208, 245, 376 slugging, 35% K rate, 4% walk rate. Dahlbeck in his AA season in 2019, which was when he had 430 at bats this year, was 234, 371, 454, 15% or 16% walk rate, 25% K rate.
Yeah.
I understand Bobby Dahlbeck's had a rough year, but he was a significantly better prospect than Nick Northcutt. So I don't think it's fair on him to be he's basically trading the next Bobby Dahlbeck. Dahlbeck still, I think, has a major league future. And I think that, people forget that how he was obviously much better performing when he was in the minors than he has been against major league pitching.
Put it this way, Bobby Dahlbeck would never have been on the bench in Portland playing
he also
2 to 4 times a week.
He wouldn't have been available as the player to be named later in a Tommy Pham trade either.
Exactly. Last thing on my list, Ian, is, of course, the Portland Sea Dogs. We kind of alluded to it in the Eastern League playoffs right now. In the last week of the season, had a few promotions. They got a couple of starters in Wyatt Olds and Shi Jung Liu, who came up, and a couple of relievers in Brendan Salucci and Jacob Webb, who came up. And then, of course, Matthew Lugo was called up. I think apparently he wasn't with the team yet. I think he came up because Alex Benelis got hurt. So that did open up some playing time, and they were like, okay, beautiful. We can get Lugo up. Just to get guys some experience there before the end of the year because the season was still going. The relievers, Salucci and Webb, are still on the roster for the playoffs. The hitters, Lugo is also active, but he didn't start game 1. And the Olds and Liu got deactivated because the starters are going to be Shane Drohan started game 1. Thaddeus Ward is going to start game 2. Game 3 will be either Sterling Sharp or Brian Van Bell, with the other one probably available to piggyback because it's a 3-game series, presuming if Portland's able to win game 2 tomorrow night, or tonight, probably when you're listening to this, when we drop it. So yeah, they're in the playoffs. They had some promotions. It's neat. That's about it. Anything else, Ian, or should we jump to some emails? Want to jump to some emails? Okay, cool. All right. As I mentioned, podcast@soxprospects.com is the email to hit up if you've got an email for the show. And our first email, Ian, comes from Harrison, who says, do you think the Red Sox intend to burn through Casas' rookie eligibility in 2022 with Eric Hosmer and Franchi Cordero injured and Dahlbeck back where he belongs? Casas could pass 130 at bats. Is the plan to take him out of Rookie of the Year running in 2023 so the club maintains all the years of control? That's not how it works. So a player gets the full year if they win Rookie of the Year for that year.
He's also, I don't think he's going to.
He's not.
He's not going to.
This email came in on September 10th, so
okay,
he hasn't played every day, so he's not going to pass.
He's not playing against lefties, really.
So, no, yeah. He's sitting, which I don't love. I want him to maybe you get him comfortable against righties before then easing him in against lefties. So I guess I get that.
Yeah, no, I get that. But yeah, he's got 41 at bat, 41 plate appearances, like 13 games. He's not going to hit those numbers.
He's not. And yeah, I mean, he's not going to get there with service time either. And again, even if they like you get the full year for like that year. You don't get like an extra year of service time beyond what you have for winning Rookie of the Year. It's an incentive for teams to call up guys at the beginning of the year who might be Rookie of the Year types, like the Julio Rodriguez's of the world. But anyway, yeah, but that's the situation with that rule. Thanks for the email, Harrison. Our next email is from John B, who he says, I have a question about your favorite Sox prospects. Clickbait, Blaze Jordan. As good as he's been at the plate, you guys have said reportedly that he's not good enough defensively, or repeatedly that he's not good enough defensively to stick at third base. First base only is a really limited defensive profile. So why not start giving Jordan reps in left field? Just think of the excitement it could generate. The Red Sox are savvy marketers, and having the most buzz-generating prospects in the system, playing the team's most iconic position makes almost too much sense. Williams, Yaz, Rice, Manny, ... Blaze, what do you think? Yes, I realize Jordan could have more trade value at third, but if it's obvious to you guys that his glove isn't good enough for third, presumably other teams know this too. John B. And good point on that last part. Agree. I could see getting him reps in left, but he's not quite fleet of foot. I don't see a great fit there. I don't know what you think, Ian, as far as Blaze Jordan playing left field.
Yeah, I think it's profile's better at first base, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried that when he got up to AA, but I feel like you don't really see the moves like that until they get up to the high minors. Like right now, you let him play where he's comfortable. He's splitting time between first base and third base, and like let him focus on the plate, which is kind of what his carrying tools are going to be if he reaches his potential.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Our next email comes from one of our latest $5 level Patreon supporters, John Mulqueen, who asks, my question involves the Arizona Fall League. I'm thinking of making a trip there this fall. I read that to mean the kids are out of the house and my wife has given her permission. Good for you, John. Have either of you attended? I understand how it works from what you have said and from their website, but what would the experience be like? Are the games and atmosphere more like a good minor league game or a spring training game? Thanks, John. Neither of us has been. My understanding, Ian, is it's probably more like a spring training game than a minor league game. I don't think they're that well. I mean, they're like better attended than like fall instructs or something, but like it's not like, I don't know what they have for concessions. They're like, I mean, they have like night games, so like people go, but I don't think it's a big crowd. But if you want to see top prospects, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good place to go see it.
I just searched the attendance from last season in 2021. Well, the last season there was, and it was approximately 660 people a game.
Yeah, so it's a small crowd. It's like what you would have seen at like Hagerstown.
Yeah, it's like a short season of amount. But I've never been, so I don't know. Yeah,
but I mean, like I said, as far as on-field product, it's a good place to check out a game. So I would definitely recommend doing.
There will be you'll see a lot of MLB personnel there, and there's a reason they like to get out there and be able to catch what's going on the field there, and also pop over to Instructs because the Arizona teams tend to play games too.
Our next question is from Forrest, who asks, does Chris Murphy get a shot in the big leagues next year? Seems like it's been up and down for him in Worcester so far. How about Thad Ward? Are either of them capable of being starters in the bigs? Forrest. Commenting really quick on Murphy being up and down in Worcester so far, I think he's just gassed. He's already like 30 innings above where he was last year, if not more at this point. Like, yeah, I think it makes perfect sense for him to just be absolutely gassed right now. Wouldn't surprise me if they skip the start for him if they're able. I could absolutely see either of those guys pitching in the majors in next year.
Yeah. I think that obviously, especially if they're on the 40-man roster, as we saw this year, you're going to have to dig deep potentially. You need those guys to be ready to be MLB depth. And I think that they potentially could be in that role.
Mm-hmm. And then do you see either of them capable of being starters in the bigs? I mean, ceiling wise, maybe Ward more likely than Murphy, or no? Because I think we've kind of gone round and round.
It's hard to say with Ward because I haven't seen him since he's back from his injury, and we haven't seen him like.
At this point, he's just about getting innings. But that's what it is.
Murphy, I think I'm leaning more reliever now on him.
All right. Our next question is from Andy, who says, what the heck happened with Durbin Feltman this season? After 2021, it looked like he was on track to being an up and down guy for the Sox in 2022, but it seemed to go off the rails for him this year. I realize he's no longer the closer of the future and is more of a pitch to contact guy now, but didn't expect him to have such a rough season. Thanks, Andy. Ian, a guy whose scouting report we just updated, so good timing. What's up with that?
His stuff has just regressed. He's like 90 to 92 now. Neither of his secondaries is showing the potential it did back when he was, in the low minors. And I think it's just kind of the stuff is backed up on him, and the performance has obviously suffered this season. And I think people forget too, like he's 25 already. He's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. So
No.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's someone that I guess what is he? Is he a minor league free agent? No, he's not.
No, he's got one more year of Rule 5 eligibility, which he's not going to get protected or picked.
He's not going to get protected. I don't think he'll get picked. Yeah. So, he'll be back
unless some
next
team
year.
Thinks they can fix him,
unlock it. Yeah. But so we'll see if the stuff comes back, but it's tough to project that as it's been gone now for a few years.
Mm-hmm. Our next question, Ian, comes from Dylan Costa, who asks, how would you guys feel about loading up the bullpen next season with multi-inning guys? Have like 5 to 6 of them, like Crawford or Seabold, for example. I could see some value in having a more amorphous pitching staff in general, and I think it'd be interesting to see how that type of bullpen could do and be managed over the course of a season. Thanks again for taking the time. I appreciate it. Ian, I mean, first of all, if you're giving a spot to John Schreiber and I guess Houck could fit that too. Maybe, but then it's like, what are you going to do with a guy like Franklin Herman? What are you going to do with a guy like Zach Kelly? Like, those aren't multi-inning guys. You're just going to like jettison them. I think you just have different types of guys, and you just throw your best 13 pitchers on the major league roster is where it comes down to for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on going with an all bulk guy? Maybe not bulk guy, but multi-inning bullpen.
I don't think that makes a lot of sense in the modern game, especially given how especially relievers have a lot of significant platoon splits often. Like I wouldn't want a bunch of guys who can go 2 innings, and having to, if you're turning the lineup over, you go from, facing the bottom of the order to facing, a bunch of good lefties. Like I'd rather have a 1-inning lefty to bring in that situation. And I think also with usage, it creates some issues. Like we've seen it with the Red Sox this season. Like it's tough when, your best 3 relievers, Houck, Schreiber, and Whitlock, if they're going multiple innings, then are down for 2 days afterwards. And I think in just the modern game, you need pitchers who, you need relievers who can pitch 4 games a week, 3 games a week, even. And that, it's hard to do that when you're pitching multiple innings. So I think you need a blend. Like my ideal bullpen construction, if we're talking about an 8-man bullpen, would be to have 2 to 3 bulk guys, have, a true closer, and then you can have, 5 or 4 or 5, kind of shorter relievers. But
who can go back to back to 3 or 4.
Frankly, you can even go to 4 bulk guys. Like have one like innings eater who's kind of the guy you throw out there when it's a tough situation. You got to burn some innings. Then having 2 to 3 bulk guys who you trust in leverage situations, and then some middle relievers, and then maybe a setup guy and a closer. But I think you need a mix of both.
Mm-hmm. Our next email comes from friend of the show, Marklin Herman, and he says, I enjoyed you guys kind of teasing me a bit about the idea of bringing up Wong or Baldwin. I don't remember when. But after watching Wong, I think he's a viable catcher. The hitting has been a surprise, but maybe even more that his defense. The error last night, he sent the 6 days ago, accepted. He seemed to be pretty good. So yay for me. Yay for you, Mark. His question, seems to me that their union with Christian Vasquez isn't nearly as likely. Both Wong and McGuire have made cases to play, and an even split seems like a workable solution and a cheaper one. I just listened to the September 10th podcast, and both of you said a no to Crawford in the rotation next year. I get it to a point because he's been inconsistent, but in a 10-start stretch beginning with June 12th start, he had only 1 start where he failed to get to 5 innings and 1 other clunker versus Kansas City. 4 quality starts, and if he'd gotten 1 more out on the 18th of July, it would have been 5 straight quality starts. He lowered his ERA from 5.75 to 4.17 in that time before, I'm assuming, gassed out because it has gotten ugly. He wasn't good in the bullpen early, and he said he clearly prefers starting. Does that make him a trade candidate? I could see teams looking for cheap, controllable arms, looking at that stretch and believing he could anchor the back end of a rotation for a mid-level or lower team. What are your I thought we were going to talk about catching, but that took a turn. Your thoughts on Cutter Crawford's role next year, Ian? I think at the very least you can't go into the year with planning on him to start.
Well, no, and I think what he illustrated is kind of the issue with Crawford is just the lack of consistency, and frankly, we also saw it with the health. Those are the two kind of knocks on him. And there are a lot of pitchers you can have like a good run, but you need to be able to be a starter. You need to be able to do that for 25 to 30 starts a season,
year in and year out too.
Year in and year out, and that's for 3, 4, 5 years at a time. I don't think Crawford has that type of consistency and sustainability in the rotation. I do think the point he made at the end, I think, is a good one about. Maybe it's not for the Red Sox. There are guys who I think Connor Siebold's another example of this, is someone who I don't think is a starter for the Red Sox, but maybe a second division team thinks he could be a back end starter. And so maybe they have more value to them, someone like that. So I do think Crawford could fit that mold, but I think that there's not a lot of teams that view him as a starter, mainly because the combination of his delivery, injury history, and then just the lack of consistency. It's just tough to project a guy like that to be, someone you can count on to go, 5-6 innings every fifth day for multiple seasons.
And I mean, compare what he did this year to like Tanner Houck in 2020 and early 2021. Like,
that's
again,
the thing.
Guys can have stretches.
Yeah, guys have good stretches. That doesn't mean just because and even I think Bobby Dahlbeck's another good example of this. Just because you have like one good season doesn't mean you're an everyday player still. Like when with someone like Dahlbeck, we didn't obviously project him to be an everyday guy. We saw him more as a platoon bat, and I still stand by that, even though he's not in the big leagues now. But just because you have one season like that, when we're projecting those guys out, we're projecting them out for the course of their career over a several season sample, not just a one season sample.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Our next question comes from Matt, who has a question about the Chris Sale contract. With Xander Bogaerts getting all the attention for his player option, and rightfully so, there has not been much talk about Sales. Just to be clear, if I can interject right here, he's got an opt-out. It's not an option. It's technically just a semantics thing, but for what it's worth. Technically, he can opt out of his existing contract. It would be so. Okay, he says, I have not seen much talk about Chris Sale's opt out. It would be crazy to expect Sale to opt out given the fact that he could not get the money he's owed on the open market. But my question is, do you think there's a possibility that he gets a restructured deal at some point this offseason? For someone who is so passionate about being on the mound and producing at a high level, I feel like he may just be open to it for the betterment of the team. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, Matt. Solid no chance on that one.
The Players Association would never allow it.
Never. They would
think about. Think about A-Rod. A-Rod tried to give some money back, and they said absolutely not.
Yeah, with that they won't let him do that
to facilitate the trades with the Red Sox, and they said no.
Here's the thing:
can't do it.
This isn't like the NFL where there's a hard salary cap.
Well, also in the NFL, what they're doing there is they're just moving, like they'll tack on additional money fake around. Years. Like the money that they get paid out stays the same. It just
no one takes an actual
the cap hit is just
cut.
Distributed differently.
Right.
And I think with this new CBA, they've closed that loophole where you can add years to pay the CBA or to lower the CBT tax.
Well, no,
whatever,
not
right?
necessarily.
Isn't the Will Myers contract isn't allowed anymore?
No, you can do whatever contract you want. It's if you get traded, your AAV resets.
Got it. Okay.
So there's no front loading a contract and then a guy gets traded later and his AAV is 4 million instead of 10.
Yeah.
Or you would know it would be backloading a contract. The AAV resets after the trade.
Yeah.
So, and that like we talked about, that's why the Padres traded Eric Hosmer, because his AAV actually dropped when he got traded because he had a front-loaded contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm doing this correctly in my head. All right, final email, not final email. We got 2 more emails. This email is from Patreon supporter Al Mendel, and he says, I find OPS to be the single best. He says, I have an idea that I'd like to get your feedback on as experienced evaluators. I find OPS to be the single best stat for evaluating a player's overall offensive contribution, except that it does I think it means does not value steals. Personally, I'd like to see steals added to a player's total bases, +1 for a steal, -1 for a caught stealing. This would affect a player's slugging percentage, which would in turn affect the player's OPS. As an example, David Hamilton's 2022 stat line would see his total bases go from 181 to 242, his slugging go from 399 to 533, and his OPS from 733 to 867. What do you think of this idea? Does it value speed in a way that makes sense to you guys? Thanks, Al. Valuing steals, and then this kind of goes back to something we were talking about last episode of with the new rules, does speed matter more, right? I think I would suggest to anyone listening, Al, or otherwise, if you are plugged in enough to listen to us, right? So we're kind of starting with a certain level of fan. I would encourage you to go beyond OPS. And here's why. OPS, and then I guess we'll get back to the speed point. OPS is problematic in that you are taking two statistics in on base percentage and slugging percentage that are not meant to be considered on the same scale, and you are just smashing them together. It's just not a statistically sound way to create a number. It's nice in that it can like add up to 1,000, and that's good. It's a nice round number to get your head around, and it's good for like shorthand. But if you want like a single number offensive, evaluation number, use like WRC plus on Fangraphs or like OPS plus on Baseball Reference. Those are numbers that take a player's offensive contributions, do some things to them to compare them to the league and to properly balance things like on base versus slugging, because on base is more important to scoring runs than slugging is. So like not every 1,000 OPS is created equal, right? Like a 500 on base, 500 slugging is better than a 400 on base and 600 slugging, right? So using things like that to do evaluation. That said, I don't think those numbers include stolen bases either. And at that point, I think that's when you need to start looking at things like, as my cat literally chases her tail on the background. I don't know if you can see this, Ian. Runs created, the offensive component of wins above replacement, that sort of thing. Those take steals into account. So that's another way that you can look at a single statistic to evaluate a player's total offensive contribution. That said, they're not necessarily intuitive numbers, right? That's the nice thing about WRC plus and OPS plus is they are scaled to like what you should be familiar with in terms of like a batting average. Like 300 is very good, right? So I would suggest using those. But as far as steals, I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Ian, in terms of evaluating stolen bases in a concise way? I just can't think of a good way to do it because it's not the same necessarily as a total bases and slugging.
Well, I think the biggest issue is that minor league stolen base numbers need to be taken with a grain of salt.
Oh, for sure. No, I get that.
I think that's the biggest issue with this is like there are guys who aren't fast who can steal like 40, 50, 60 bases in the minors. Like Garen Cicchini is the one that comes to mind with me. He was like 40. He had like 40 speed, and what do you have, 50 steals in Greenville or something?
Fair, but I mean, we're talking about Hamilton. He did break the Sea Dogs franchise stolen base record this year. Granted,
right.
with bigger bases, this doesn't a pickoff rule.
Right. They had a lot of help, but this doesn't apply to Hamilton necessarily because he is legitimately fast. But there are guys who aren't fast who have a lot of steals.
Sure. But I think he means more in the major leagues. Is how I take it.
I thought he was talking about when evaluating minor leaguers was how I kind of read it. But
I mean, he's talking about offensive contribution. I mean, I guess minor leaguers too. I guess that's fair. I just that's me putting my own spin on it, but that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think I think it's hard to say without knowing how the rule changes are going to impact stolen base numbers next season. Is it going to become a free for all? But I still think I go back to the biggest issues. You can't steal first base, and that's why like it's so important to understand the other stuff. It's like, should someone like Hamilton be rewarded for like just having a bunch of infield singles where he steals second base? Like, I don't know if that's sustainable. Whereas like guys who are constantly hitting doubles, hard doubles, like that's not created equal to me. And I also think that the other issue with that is that like someone like Hamilton this season, I mean, he only had 8 caught stealings, but they're not getting punished for getting caught stealing, which is obviously a big negative to the team. So they're only getting the positives of it. So I think that would need to be factored into anything too. Is like, and the thing how many outs are they running into as a result of it?
And the thing is, I think, because he suggests doing like -1 from total bases for a caught stealing, but I don't think I don't think that's good enough because you are creating an out as opposed to like not taking second.
It's not you don't get demoted from second to first. Like you create an out for your
team. So that you would have to significantly. So like when you look at like runs created is a stat, for example, that factors in stolen bases, and like you get punished for getting caught stealing because you've created an out. So it's almost like you need to count it like an at bat. So it's almost maybe like add a plate appearance for a caught stealing or something would be the way you would do it. But even still, like it's tough because you're not doing apples to apples. But it's a fair thing to think about. Ian, very interesting question here for our final email, and maybe we'll need to punt this for next episode because I don't know if you're going to have someone top of mind for this or not. I have a couple guys in mind, but I got to double check. This email is from Joe, who says, "Who is the best non-top 100 player that you saw this year playing for another team? So non-Red Sox. Do you ever develop scouting notes for other players that stand out in the event they become Red Sox in the future?" So I'll kick to you, obviously, because you saw way more games than me this year.
Wait, sorry. Can you repeat the beginning? Was it the best non-top 100?
Non-top 100 player you saw for another. So put it this, if you want to mention a top 100 player, go for it. But the question is best non-top 100 player you saw playing for another team. And I guess the easy part of this to answer is, do you create notes for other players and other teams that stand out? I definitely don't. I just don't have.
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. So I write up, or not write up, but I have notes on all the pitchers that the Red Sox face because I think it's relevant for when I'm going back and evaluating the performance of the players in the game. So I'll write up all the opposing pitchers, and then if there's any hitters that catch my eye, I will write notes on them also. The top non-top 100 guy. 1 second, let me grab my notes. I need to look at something.
Yeah, so I've got two guys that are coming to mind, and I don't know. Is Heston Kjerstad still? He's not a top 100 guy anymore, right? All right. Yeah, I saw Heston Kjerstad of the Orioles organization, Ian, in Delmarva, who had a pretty good game. I mean, I only saw like 5 games this year just for a number of reasons, work and location related, in person at least. So Kjerstad, and then is Jeremy De La Rosa. Yeah, Jeremy De La Rosa from the Nationals had a really good weekend when I saw Fredericksburg. So I think he would be the other guy who comes to mind for me as top guys that I saw this year on other teams. And I'm trying to vamp for you to look through your notes.
Well, one I know is I saw in spring training Emmanuel Rodriguez with the Twins, and he might be a top 100 prospect now. And if he's not, he should be. Mm-hmm. I think he had a really good year, and then he got hurt. If I don't know if you can bring up his stats.
He's not top 100 on Pipeline, at least.
But do you have his stats there? Like, they were absurd. His stat line is crazy this year. He was
from the Twins.
Yeah. Oh, he's a top 100 guy now, but Logan O'Hoppe is fantastic prospect, and I was shocked that he wasn't a consistent or consensus top 100 guy.
Yeah, he's 66 on Pipeline now.
Yeah, heading into the season, he should have been a consensus top 100 guy. He's can really catch. He can really hit. He's got power.
Emmanuel Rodriguez is 95 on Pipeline.
Okay, he should be, because his. I don't.
I've got his numbers here. So he in A ball this year hit 272, 492, 551.
Yeah,
for a 1.043 OPS.
And he's 19.
Yeah, which again, I know I just crapped all over OPS, but it's good shorthand.
No, he got paid 19. Too. He was
2.75 mil.
He was very good when I saw him in spring training, and I remember talking to some scouts, being like, "What? Why is this guy not higher ranked?" Mm-hmm. He was good. Cade Povich was another one, and this is just proximity. I saw the Twins a bunch this spring training. I liked him a lot. He actually got traded to I want to say the Orioles in the Jorge Lopez trade. It was like a big lefty, good velo, can spin a breaking ball, good feel. But yeah, I think Rodriguez and O'Hoppe were the two that, like, I saw O'Hoppe back in the beginning of the season, and that was just like, why is this guy not? Because I don't think coming into the year, he was. I'm going to look actually. Mm-hmm. I don't believe coming into the season he was a consensus top 100 guy, whereas I was in strong belief that he should. Yeah, he wasn't, because BREF doesn't have him at all at the top of their page. And this season, he obviously got traded to the Angels at the deadline. With Philadelphia, he was 275, 392, 496 with 15 home runs and 75 games. And since he's been traded to the Angels in Double A, he's 306, 473, 674.
That's good.
Yeah. So, and he controls the strikes. He's got 70 walks, 74 strikeouts this year. He was one of the most impressive guys I've seen this year. Obviously Francisco Alvarez were the top two catchers I saw this year.
Which Alvarez is obviously a top 100 guy.
But yeah, no, I think O'Hoppe and Rodriguez would be my two that fit that the most. But yeah, no, I definitely keep track of all these guys, and like, it's definitely helped in the past. I'm trying to think of who the guy the Red Sox acquired was that I'd seen extensively.
Oh,
it was someone in a
gosh.
trade, and it was like, oh yeah, I saw.
It was
this
within the
person.
last couple of years.
Yeah,
too.
and it was one of these ones like, oh yeah, I had no.
It wasn't Victor
like,
Santos, was it?
No, I had seen Eduardo Rodriguez though before they got him, but it wasn't him. Who was it? It was someone they got in a trade, and I had seen him like years ago in the low minors, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna bother me now until I figure it out. So you start talking so I can look.
Okay. So rainbows, lollipops, and sunshine. So you're looking up what player got traded to the Red Sox that you had seen. That was
I'm just looking at who the Red Sox have acquired in trades in the last couple of years. Because
I don't know.
But anyway, well, I mean, there's obviously a lot of minor league.
I remember this being a thing that happened, but
there's definitely a lot of like minor league free agents that I've seen before.
It wouldn't have been Herman, wouldn't have?
No.
I'm trying to think of Herman they traded for.
There's no way to sort by like trade logs, is there? Just trades?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
I'll if I figure it out, I'll mention it.
I was gonna say if you found it, good for you.
But wait, I did actually find a way to search it.
You Control F
on SPPod you can search by trades.
Oh, lovely.
It was, I think it was last season. Oh, it was was it? Yeah, no, it was the Rays guys. It was Hernandez and Sogard I had seen before.
Oh, well, I thought you were saying it was a pitcher.
It might have been. It's definitely. I mean, there's other guys I'm sure that fit that thing, but I had seen them. No, I wasn't thinking of them. Though. I was thinking of a pitcher. Let's see, how far back am I gonna have to go? I don't appreciate the music, for the record.
I'm trying to vamp for you. Come on.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't feel like searching further back. But yes, it has been relevant in the past.
Sure. Ian is more talented at doing that. I am like a squirrel. Focusing on even just the Red Sox guys can be difficult for me at times. So, yeah, that's the difficult thing to do, especially because it's like when the Red Sox are in the field, I'm focusing on the pitcher and the defense. When the Red Sox are at the plate, I am focusing on the hitter, and like how they are reacting to the pitcher. So I think it's a little easier to do for opposing pitchers, right? Because you're keeping track of the pitches that are coming in and the counts and things like that, so you can evaluate the hitter. Whereas vice versa, it can be, I feel like, harder. Although maybe not if a guy stands out to you. Like, I mean,
well, no, because like
Juan Soto stood out to me when I saw him.
If you're watching the pitcher, like you're obviously the context of the batter is important. So
I guess that's true.
I think it kind of you like when you see loud contact, you know loud.
Oh,
contact.
And that's what I'm saying. Like when you watch Francisco Alvarez or Juan Soto, you are watching a very good prospect, right? Like that doesn't take a whole lot, but it's like seeing a fringy guy who it's like, oh, there might be something here. Like I feel like that can be a little tougher. Just because you're not quite bearing down as much on that side of the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, thank you all for the emails. Thank you all for listening. We will wrap it up. Of course, make sure you're following us on Twitter. You can follow Ian at Ian Kundle. Follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. You can follow the site on Twitter and Instagram at Sox Prospects. We always want to give a shout out to our $5 level Patreon supporters. That'd be Deb Kendall, Andrew Wallen, Lendl Martin, Ernest Shermer, Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Pat in New Hampshire, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Evan Kirkwood, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kennan, Ben NRI, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Katrides, Steve Gregory, James Bailey, Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Mark Herman, Brian Cowan, Andrew K., Jeff Harwood, Dusty G., Michael Murphy, Bob Introne, Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, Mike Polano, Chris Bollier, Curtis Waltman, Michael Stewart, Caleb Farron, John Kane, Jason Stoneburner, Jason Parker, Mike Mignosa, Jeff Richardson, Eric Peterson, Michael Cullen, John McGee, Nicholas Lenson, Paul Manish, James P. McMahon, Jim Tuttle, Adam Gregory, Brian Rose, Jake O'Donnell, and John Mulqueen. Thank you all for your support. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back at you soon, probably in a couple weeks, with another episode of the podcast that'll be post minor league season. So we'll be back at you soon with maybe a look back at the season and, of course, anything that happens between now and then. So we'll be back in your eardrums soon. Thanks for listening, everybody.